Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a medieval hunting lodge, and I promise you, you're not going to make it. Picture this. It's somewhere around 1320, deep in the forests of England or France, and you've just been invited to join a noble's hunting party for a long weekend. Sounds romantic, right? All those tapestries and roaring fires and knights in shining armor? Yeah, no. What you're actually walking into is a freezing stone nightmare where hygiene is optional, breakfast is a violent affair, and every single activity is designed to remind you that you don't belong. The hunting lodge isn't some cozy cabin. It's a status arena where one wrong move with a fork, if you even get a fork, could tank your reputation forever. You probably won't survive this, and honestly, you'll beg to go home before the first hunt even starts. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how this little community spans the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's 4 a.m., and you're being shaken awake by a servant whose name you don't know and whose face you can barely see in the darkness. There's no gentle rise and shine here, no gradual return to consciousness. One moment you're dreaming about indoor plumbing, the next moment cold fingers are gripping your shoulder, and a voice is hissing that my lord expects everyone in the great hall within the hour. You try to remember where you are. Right, the hunting lodge. You arrived yesterday after 2 days of riding, your thighs still screaming from hours in an unfamiliar saddle, and collapsed into what you thought was a bed. In reality, it was a straw mattress on a wooden frame, and you shared the room with 3 other guests of similarly ambiguous rank. The room has no heat source except body warmth and possibly some lingering resentment. You sit up, and the cold hits you like a physical slap. We're talking late autumn or early winter here, prime hunting season, and this stone chamber has retained exactly 0 warmth from yesterday's fires. Your breath mists in front of your face. The walls are bare stone, maybe with a tapestry or 2 if you're lucky, but those are decorative, not insulating. The window, and yes, there's a window, is just an open hole in the wall, maybe with wooden shutters that don't quite close. Glass? In a hunting lodge? You're hilarious. The floor is stone or hard-packed earth covered with rushes that haven't been changed in weeks, possibly months. You can smell them from the bed. A mixture of old herbs, dog urine, spilled beer, and things you don't want to identify. But here's the real kicker. You've been wearing these clothes for at least a day already, and you'll wear them for several more. There's no changing outfits daily in a hunting lodge. You pack light because you had to carry everything on horseback, and laundry isn't something that just happens. So that tunic already smells like yesterday's horse and your own anxiety sweat. You'll be adding today's forest grime, blood, we'll get to that, and with smoke to the mix. By day 3, you'll smell like a walking ecosystem, and so will everyone else. The medieval hunting lodge is basically a human terrarium of body odor, and there's nothing you can do about it. Washing is technically an option, but it's winter, remember? The water in the basin, if there is a basin, has a skin of ice on it. You can break the ice and splash some on your face if you want to prove you're tough, but most people just don't. They maybe wipe their face with a cloth, run fingers through their hair, and call it good. Teeth brushing? Sure, if you brought a chew stick and have the coordination to use it while shivering. Deodorant is not a thing that exists. Perfume exists, but it's expensive, and dumping it on doesn't really mask the smell so much as create a new, more complex smell. You know that thing where someone tries to cover up body odor with too much cologne and it just makes everything worse? Yeah, that's been a problem since at least the 1300s. The servant is back, more insistent now. The Lord is waiting. You stumble toward the door, trying to orient yourself in a building you barely know. The hunting lodge is a maze of chambers, corridors, and unexpected stairs. It's not designed for comfort or logic. It's designed to impress and to accommodate large hunting parties. You might share this wing with a dozen other guests, all of varying ranks, all trying to navigate the same dark corridors with the same inadequate lighting. Candles are expensive. Torches are smoky. Mostly you're following the faint glow from the great hall and hoping you don't trip over a sleeping dog or a drunk servant who passed out in the hallway. Speaking of dogs, they're everywhere. Medieval hunting lodges are basically half-kennel. The lord's hunting hounds have better accommodations than most peasants. Heated kennels, dedicated handlers, special diets. But they're still dogs, and medieval dogs are not your modern, well-trained, Instagram-ready golden retrievers. These are working animals, bred for aggression and stamina, and they roam semi-freely through the lodge. You'll round a corner and nearly step on a sleeping greyhound. You'll sit down and find an allant, a massive mastiff-type dog, staring at you with the intensity of something that could absolutely take you in a fight. The dogs smell. The dogs shed. The dogs occasionally fight each other. And when they do, it's terrifying. Think growling, snapping, yelping chaos while servants scramble to separate them with sticks. Historians still argue whether medieval nobles genuinely loved their hunting dogs or simply valued them as expensive tools. But either way, the dogs get more respect than you do. If you accidentally kick one in the dark, you'd better hope no one important saw. Mistreating a valuable hunting dog could get you ejected from the lodge, or worse, challenged to some kind of honor-defending nonsense you're not equipped to handle. You make it to the Great Hall, and it's already crowded. Despite the ungodly hour, everyone is up, or at least pretending to be functional. The hall is the heart of the lodge, a large, high-ceilinged room with a central hearth and long tables. The fire is roaring. Finally, warmth. But it's also smoking like crazy because medieval chimneys are more of a suggestion than a solution. The smoke sort of drifts upward and eventually finds its way out through holes in the roof, but mostly it just hangs in the air, making your eyes water and your throat itch. You'll smell like smoke for days. Everything will smell like smoke for days. The lord of the lodge is already present, probably seated in the only chair with arms. Everyone else gets benches. Looking alert in a way that feels personally offensive given the hour. He's surrounded by his closest companions. Other nobles, maybe a visiting knight or two, his huntmaster, his chaplain. They're all talking in low voices, discussing the day's hunt. And you realize with creeping dread that you're expected to have opinions about this. You're expected to know things. You're expected to participate in a conversation about which part of the forest has the best deer, which dogs are in prime condition, what the weather omens suggest about the day's success. You know none of this. You can barely remember your own name at 4 a.m., let alone the complex social hierarchy of medieval hunting strategy. So you do what any sensible person does. You smile, nod, and try to position yourself near someone who seems friendly and might explain what's happening. This is harder than it sounds because everyone is sizing everyone else up. Hunting parties are political events. They're where alliances are built, marriages are negotiated, land deals are discussed, and reputations are made or destroyed. That guy who just clapped you on the shoulder with excessive friendliness? He's either genuinely nice or trying to figure out if you're useful to him. That woman giving you a cool, assessing look from across the hall? She's already decided you're irrelevant. And now you have to prove her wrong through some combination of hunting prowess and dinner conversation you definitely don't possess. And everyone looks exhausted but somehow functional. Like they've done this 1,000 times. Which they have. This is their world. You're just visiting, and it shows in every uncertain step, every moment of hesitation, every time you glance around trying to figure out what happens next. Medieval people can read this uncertainty like a book. They know you don't belong. They're just being polite enough not to say it out loud. Yet, the room smells like unwashed humans, wet dog, smoke, and something cooking that might be your breakfast. Your eyes are adjusting to the firelight. Your body is screaming for coffee, which won't be introduced to Europe for another few centuries. Instead, someone hands you a cup of small beer, weak ale that's safer than water, and you drink it because you're thirsty and it's warm, even though it's 4 a.m. and you're technically drinking alcohol for breakfast. Welcome to medieval life, where beer is a food group and hydration is a dice roll. You've been awake for maybe 20 minutes, and you're already cold, smoky, confused, and vaguely drunk. The actual hunting hasn't even started yet. This is just the wake-up routine, and you're already failing. The smell hits you first. A rich, gamey aroma that's part roasted meat, part congealed fat, part something you can't quite identify and aren't sure you want to. Breakfast is being laid out on the long tables, and it's nothing like what you're imagining. There's no continental spread, no fruit bowls, No yogurt or granola or anything that might constitute a light morning meal. Medieval nobles break their fast like warriors preparing for battle, because in a way they are. You're about to spend 6 to 8 hours in the forest chasing animals that can and will fight back. And you need calories. Lots of them. The problem is, those calories come in forms that will test every limit of your modern digestive system. First course. Leftover meat from yesterday's hunt. And when I say leftover, I mean it sat out overnight in a storage room that's only marginally cooler than room temperature. There's venison, possibly some wild boar, maybe a few game birds if the previous day's hunting was successful. It's been roasted and then just kind of left. No refrigeration, no plastic wrap, just meat on a platter in a coldish room, slowly developing that special medieval funk. Some of it has been reheated over the fire, which helps, but some of it is being served at whatever temperature it achieved overnight. You take a piece of venison because refusing food is incredibly rude, and you bite into meat that's simultaneously tough, greasy, and vaguely sour in a way that makes your modern food safety instincts scream. Everyone else is eating enthusiastically, tearing into the meat with their hands and their personal knives, because yes, you bring your own knife to meals, and if you forgot yours, you're eating with your fingers like some kind of peasant. The bread being passed around is dark, dense, and slightly stale. It's trencher bread, which means it's serving double duty as both food and plate. You pile meat onto your bread slab, and the bread slowly absorbs all the grease and juices until it becomes a soggy, semi-edible mess that you're expected to eat at the end of the meal. Or not eat it. Sometimes trencher bread is given to the poor or the dogs after the meal. Either way, you're holding your breakfast in a piece of structural carbohydrate while grease runs down your wrist. The servants are watching you. This is unnerving at first, then you realize it's just how things work. Medieval servants don't disappear into the background the way modern waitstaff try to. They're present, attentive, constantly circulating with pitchers of ale and platters of food, and they're absolutely keeping track of who's eating what and how much. Your eating habits will be reported back to the kitchen, which will report them to the household steward, which means your breakfast choices are now part of the lodge's social intelligence network. Took 3 helpings of the boar? Greedy. Barely touched your food? Rude or possibly sick. Trying to discreetly spit out a particularly gristly bit of meat? Too late, the servant pouring your ale definitely saw that, and now everyone will know. And speaking of that ale, you're on your second cup before you've finished your meat, because the food is salty and greasy and you're desperately thirsty. The ale is helping, sort of, but it's also making the early morning feel increasingly surreal. You're sitting in a smoky hall eating yesterday's venison with your hands while mildly drunk, and the sun hasn't even risen yet. The conversation around you is animated, hunting talk, always hunting talk. Someone is describing a boar hunt from last winter where the dogs cornered a massive male and it killed 2 hounds before they brought it down. Everyone is nodding appreciatively, adding their own boar stories, and you're trying to look engaged while secretly wondering if you've made a terrible mistake accepting this invitation. The Lord's Huntmaster is present, a grizzled man with scarred hands and the kind of weathered face that comes from decades in the forest. He's holding court at one end of the table, explaining today's plan. You'll be hunting deer, red deer specifically, in the eastern section of the forest where they've been spotted recently. The Huntmaster has already sent out the burners, the hunting servants who track and manage the hounds, to identify likely areas, and they'll report back shortly. This all sounds very organized and professional, which is briefly reassuring until you realize it also means everyone has an assigned role and you don't know what yours is. Historians still argue whether medieval hunting was primarily about sport or about supplementing the household's food supply, but sitting in this hall, watching the careful planning and the genuine excitement on people's faces, you get the sense it's both. Yes, they need the meat. Noble households consume astounding quantities of protein, and hunting provides variety and prestige that buying meat from a butcher doesn't. But it's also entertainment, exercise, social bonding, and a way to demonstrate masculinity and noble status. Peasants aren't allowed to hunt deer. That's a privilege reserved for the nobility, enforced by laws so harsh we'll discuss them later when they become personally relevant to your survival. More food appears. A pottage, thick stew. That's actually pretty good once you get past the texture. Some hard cheese that could double as a weapon, and pickled vegetables that provide a blessed moment of non-meat flavor. You're learning to eat like a medieval person. Quickly, efficiently, without much chewing, because the faster you eat, the more you can consume before the platters are removed. There's no leisurely brunch here. Breakfast is fuel, consumed in a rush 20 minutes before everyone needs to start preparing for the hunt. Someone near you is explaining the different types of hunting horn calls, the specific melodies that signal when a deer has been spotted, when the dogs should be released, when the kill has been made. There are dozens of these calls, apparently, and you're expected to recognize them all. You nod along, hoping no one asks you to demonstrate, while internally panicking about the sheer amount of specialized knowledge required just to participate in a recreational activity. Modern hunting is complicated, sure, but medieval hunting is an entire language and culture you don't speak. The woman across from you, a noble's wife or daughter, based on her clothing, is eating with perfect composure, taking small bites and dabbing her mouth with a cloth between each one. She makes it look effortless, like she's not consuming greasy meat with her fingers in a smoky hall at dawn. This is the standard you're being measured against. People who have been training for this their entire lives, who know instinctively how to eat with grace even in rustic conditions, who can discuss hunting strategy while maintaining perfect posture and not getting food in their hair. You, meanwhile, just dropped a piece of venison in your lap and are trying to retrieve it without anyone noticing. The servant refilling your ale definitely noticed. The Lord stands, which means breakfast is over. Everyone rises immediately. You're half a second behind everyone else, which is enough delay to mark you as slightly clueless. The Lord gives a short speech about the day's hunt, invoking Saint Hubert, the patron saint of hunters, and expressing confidence that today will bring a magnificent stag worthy of the effort. Everyone murmurs agreement. You murmur agreement half a beat late. This is becoming a pattern. As people begin filing out to prepare for the hunt, you're struck by a sudden, urgent need. You need a bathroom. Right now. The combination of cold morning air, nervous energy, and multiple cups of ale has your bladder screaming. But there's no bathroom. Not in the modern sense. There are garderobes, essentially stone closets with holes in the floor that drop waste into a pit or moat below. But you don't know where they are, and asking someone seems mortifying. Do you just wander the lodge looking for a room with a hole in it? Do you go outside? What's the protocol here? You spot someone else heading down a side corridor with purposeful urgency, and you follow at a discreet distance, hoping they're going where you need to go. They are. The garderobe is a small stone room, freezing cold. The draft coming up through the hole is arctic, with a wooden bench that has a hole cut in it. There's some straw for wiping, which, okay, you're not ready to think about that yet. You do what you need to do as quickly as possible, trying not to think about the pit below or what happens when it rains or how medieval people dealt with this 3 times a day for their entire lives. When you emerge, your hands are unwashed. There's no sink, obviously, and you're just going to have to live with that. You saw a basin in the hall, maybe you can splash some water on your hands there, but honestly, after watching everyone eat meat with their fingers, you're realizing that medieval hygiene standards are just fundamentally different. Not necessarily worse, just different. People managed. They survived. You're probably not going to die from eating breakfast with unwashed hands after using a medieval toilet. Probably. Back in the Great Hall, the energy has shifted. People are purposeful now, moving toward the next phase of the day. Servants are clearing the tables, dogs are being rounded up, and you can hear horses being prepared in the courtyard outside. The hunting master is gathering his team, the burners, the feuderers, who manage the hounds, the harborer, who tracks where the deer are sleeping. All these specialized roles, all these people who know exactly what they're doing. And then there's you. Full of questionable venison, slightly drunk, bladder empty but dignity compromised, trying to figure out what happens next. A servant approaches and asks if you need assistance preparing your equipment. You freeze. What equipment? You brought clothes. Some clothes. You didn't bring hunting gear because you didn't know you needed hunting gear. The servant's expression shifts from helpful to pitying, and they gently explain that my lord has generously provided equipment for guests who might need it. Translation. They anticipated that someone would show up unprepared, and that someone is you. You're directed to a side chamber where borrowed equipment is stored, extra bows, arrows, hunting spears, knives, gloves, cloaks. It's the medieval equivalent of the lost and found, and you're shopping from it because you're that guest. The one who didn't plan properly. The one who needs to borrow things. This is not making the impression you hoped for. As you're trying to figure out which bow might work for you, they're all too heavy. Medieval bows are not beginner-friendly. You can hear laughter from the hall. It might not be about you. It's probably not about you. But it feels like it's about you, and that's enough to make your face burn as you fumble with equipment you barely know how to hold. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen from ancient Egypt? At least ancient Egyptians didn't have to worry about being mocked for poor hunting preparation. You're dealing with a whole different level of social anxiety here, and the day hasn't even really started. The courtyard is controlled chaos, and you're standing in the middle of it trying not to get trampled. Horses are being led out from the stables, their breath steaming in the cold morning air, hooves clattering on the stone. Dogs are barking. Not the excited, playful barking of pets, but the deep, purposeful baying of hounds that know they're about to work. Servants are rushing everywhere with saddles, bridles, weapons, and equipment you can't identify. And everyone who actually belongs here is moving with practiced efficiency, calling out instructions, checking gear, greeting their mounts, while you're standing there holding a borrowed bow and trying to remember which end the arrow goes on. Someone brings you a horse. Not your horse, you don't have a horse, because you arrived on a borrowed mount and that one has been returned to the stables to rest. This is another borrowed animal, a sturdy-looking bay gelding that eyes you with what feels like deep skepticism. The groom is waiting for you to mount, and here's where your modern riding experience, if you have any, is going to fail you spectacularly. Medieval saddles are nothing like modern ones. They're high-backed, deep-seated contraptions designed to keep you locked in place during a wild chase through the forest, but they're also incredibly difficult to mount gracefully, especially when you're wearing multiple layers of wool and carrying weapons. You manage to haul yourself up. Not smoothly, definitely not gracefully, and possibly with an undignified grunt that the groom pretends not to hear. The saddle feels strange, too upright, and the stirrups are positioned differently than you're used to. The horse shifts its weight, and you grab the pommel, the front of the saddle, to steady yourself, which is exactly what you're supposed to do, but it still feels unstable. Around you, experienced riders are mounting in single fluid motions, settling into their saddles like they're sitting down for dinner. A woman, possibly the same one who ate breakfast with such composure, swings onto her horse side saddle, because noble women ride side saddle, adding an entire extra layer of difficulty to an already challenging activity, and looks perfectly balanced. You're beginning to understand that medieval nobility is basically a performance art, and you're bombing your audition. The Lord's Huntmaster is organizing people into groups. There's a hierarchy here, naturally, because there's a hierarchy to everything medieval. The Lord and his closest companions will be in the primary hunting party. They get the best positions, the best dogs, the first shot at any deer that's roused. Then there are secondary groups of varying prestige and you're being assigned to. You're not entirely sure. Someone's waving you over to a cluster of younger nobles and less important guests, which is both a blessing, less pressure, and a curse. Everyone knows you've been relegated to the B team. Your group's leader is a young knight who introduces himself with a name you immediately forget because you're too busy trying to control your horse, which has decided it wants to stand next to another horse and is sidling over despite your attempts to steer it. The knight is explaining the plan. Your group will take the western approach while the main party takes the eastern, and you'll drive any deer toward the center where the Lord will be positioned. This is called a battue hunt, apparently, and it requires coordination and discipline. You're supposed to stay in line, move when signaled, and not break formation or you'll ruin the entire hunt. No pressure. The dogs are being organized into their working groups, and this is where you realize just how sophisticated medieval hunting actually is. These aren't just random dogs running around. There are limer hounds, tracking dogs that work on leashes to find the deer. There are running hounds, the pack that will chase the deer once it's roused. There are allants, the heavy catch dogs that will actually bring down the prey if it comes to that. Each type has been bred for specific tasks over generations, and the feuders managing them know each dog's personality, strengths, and quirks. One of the limers is famous, apparently, a dog named Burslet who can track a week-old scent through running water. People speak about this dog with more respect than they've shown you. The huntmaster's harborer arrives with his report. He's found signs of a mature stag in the eastern forest, bedded down in a thick copse. Fresh tracks, fresh droppings, broken vegetation indicating a large animal. The Lord is delighted. Everyone is delighted. A stag is the prize game, hunting one is prestigious, the meat is excellent, and if it has a particularly impressive set of antlers, those will be mounted as a trophy. You're trying to share in the enthusiasm, but you're mostly worried about staying on your horse once you enter the forest. Historians still argue whether medieval hunting dogs were better trained than modern hunting breeds, but watching these dogs work, you suspect the medievals had something figured out. These animals are focused, disciplined, and completely in sync with their handlers. When a feuderer signals, the dogs respond immediately. They're not distracted by the horses, the people, or the general chaos. They have a job and they're ready to do it. You wish you felt half as prepared. The chaplain appears to bless the hunt. Of course there's a blessing. You're about to chase God's creatures through God's forest, and you need divine approval for that. Everyone bows their heads while the chaplain intones a prayer in Latin that you half remember from high school and definitely don't fully understand. You bow your head and try to look reverent while your horse attempts to nibble on the horse next to it. Someone's dog whines softly. The blessing ends, and there's a moment of anticipatory silence before the huntmaster raises his horn and blows the signal to depart. The sound is incredible, a long, resonant note that cuts through the morning air and seems to echo off the forest itself. The dogs begin baying in response, straining at their leashes. The horses prick their ears forward, and then everyone is moving, flowing out of the courtyard in a coordinated mass of riders, servants on foot and dogs, all heading toward the forest that looms dark and dense beyond the lodge's cleared grounds. You're swept along in the middle of the pack, trying to maintain your position while also not colliding with anyone. The borrowed bow is slung across your back, bouncing awkwardly. You're wearing borrowed gloves that don't quite fit. Medieval gloves are more like mittens with a separate thumb, and they're not designed for dexterity so much as warmth and protection from bowstrings. You've also got a hunting horn hanging from your belt that you have absolutely no idea how to use, and a knife that seems unnecessarily large and is currently digging into your hip. The transition from cleared ground to forest happens abruptly. One moment you're on a visible path, the next you're ducking under low branches and trying to steer your horse around trees while keeping up with the group. The forest floor is a treacherous mix of fallen leaves, hidden roots, and unexpected dips. Your horse knows this terrain better than you do and is basically choosing its own path while you cling on and hope for the best. Ahead of you, experienced riders are moving through the forest like it's a paved road, their horses stepping carefully but quickly, the riders barely swaying in their saddles. A branch whips across your shoulder. You didn't duck fast enough. Another catches your borrowed cloak and nearly pulls you sideways before the fabric tears free. The forest smells incredible, though. Damp earth, rotting leaves, pine sap, and that particular scent of undisturbed wilderness that you never quite get in modern, managed woods. It's also much darker under the canopy, and sounds behave strangely. Voices echo and distort, making it hard to tell where your companions are. Your group's knight is calling for everyone to slow down and form the line. You're approaching the area where you'll begin the drive, and positioning matters now. You're supposed to spread out, maintaining visual contact with the riders on either side of you, creating a human barrier that will push any deer toward the center. The knight is putting people in specific positions based on their skill level, and you're being placed. Well, not at the end where you'd be useless, but definitely not in a critical position. You're in the try not to mess this up too badly position, between a servant on foot and a minor noble who looks about 15 and equally nervous. The waiting begins. You're positioned on your horse, bow in hand. You manage to string it during the ride, barely, trying to stay still and quiet. The beaters and servants on foot are moving through the forest ahead of you, making noise to rouse any deer from their hiding spots. The dogs are quiet now, held in check, waiting for the signal to release. And you're just sitting there, cold, uncomfortable, hyper-aware of every sound. This is the part they don't show you in medieval manuscripts with their beautiful illuminated hunting scenes. The boredom, the physical discomfort of sitting motionless on a horse in freezing temperatures while wearing damp wool. The way your legs start to cramp. The way your fingers go numb even inside the gloves. The creeping doubt about whether you really needed to pee again before leaving the lodge because you definitely can't go now. A horn sounds in the distance. The main group has spotted something. Your group's night signals for readiness, and everyone tenses. The dogs start whining with excitement. Your horse shifts nervously, sensing the change in energy. And then you hear it, crashing through the underbrush, something large moving fast. The servants on foot are shouting, driving the animal toward the center. The knight blows his own horn, a different pattern, signaling your group's awareness and position. Everything happens at once. A deer, a doe actually, not the stag they were hoping for, bursts from the undergrowth about 50 yards to your left. She's running flat out, white tail flashing, and she's heading straight for the gap between you and the 15-year-old noble. This is your moment. You're supposed to shout, wave, make yourself intimidating, turn the deer back toward the center where the Lord is waiting. Instead, you freeze, momentarily awed by how fast and graceful the animal is, and by the time your brain catches up and you start yelling, the doe has already committed to her escape route and is bounding past you, easily clearing a fallen log and vanishing into the forest behind your line. You failed. Your first actual task in the hunt, and you failed. The knight is looking at you with barely concealed frustration. The 15-year-old noble is trying not to smirk. Even your horse seems disappointed. Someone is blowing a horn pattern that you'll later learn means the quarry has escaped, and you're responsible for that. The doe got away because you hesitated, and now everyone knows it. But there's no time to wallow in embarrassment because more deer are being roused. The beaters are doing their job, pushing animals out of hiding. You hear shouts from the main group, the deeper baying of the running hounds being released, and then the forest erupts into sound and motion. The chase is on, and you're expected to participate, which means spurring your horse forward and trying not to fall off as you plunge deeper into the woods after quarry you can't see. Following sounds you barely understand, committed now to this medieval hunting machine that doesn't care whether you're ready or not. Your borrowed bow slams against your back with every stride. Branches are everywhere, grabbing at your clothes, slapping your face. The horse is running faster than you've ever ridden, and you've completely lost control. You're just trying to stay in the saddle while the animal follows the hunt on instinct. Somewhere ahead, dogs are baying. Somewhere ahead, the real hunters are doing this properly. And here you are, hanging on for dear life, already bleeding from a branch scratch on your cheek, wondering how long you have to participate before you can claim illness and slink back to the lodge in disgrace. Welcome to medieval hunting. You're killing it. And by it, I mean your reputation. Your horse finally slows to a trot, and you take stock of where you are, completely lost. The sounds of the hunt have faded to distant horn calls echoing through the trees, and you're in a part of the forest that looks identical to every other part. Dense undergrowth, towering oaks, and absolutely no recognizable landmarks. The smart move would be to follow the sounds and rejoin the group, but your horse seems content to walk now, and honestly, you need a moment to catch your breath and check that you still have all your limbs attached. That's when you notice the marker carved into a nearby tree, a symbol you don't recognize, but clearly deliberate. You're about to learn that medieval forests aren't just hunting playgrounds. They're legal minefields where stepping wrong can cost you everything. These forests are governed by a complex web of laws so strict that they make modern hunting regulations look like gentle suggestions. Forest law, established in England by William the Conqueror and refined by subsequent kings, exists primarily to protect the king's game and to remind everyone that nature itself is owned by the nobility. That deer you just failed to turn? It wasn't just an animal. It was technically royal property, and in some forests, merely disturbing it without permission could be considered a crime. You're hunting today because you're a guest of a noble who has been granted hunting rights by the king, but those rights are specific, limited, and absolutely not transferable to you without explicit permission. The forest is divided into categories that determine who can hunt what and where. Royal forests are the king's personal hunting grounds, vast tracts of land where forest law applies most harshly. Then there are chases, noble hunting grounds, parks, enclosed hunting areas, and warrens, specifically for rabbits. Each has its own rules, its own permitted game, and its own punishments for violations. The forest you're in right now is likely a noble's chase, which means the owner has certain hunting rights granted by the crown, but even he can't just kill whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Red deer, fallow deer, roe deer, and wild boar are beasts of the forest, the most protected game. Hares, rabbits, pheasants, and partridges are beasts and fowls of the warren. Slightly lower status, but still regulated. Here's where it gets personally terrifying. If you, as an unauthorized person, were to kill a deer right now, say if one wandered past and you got lucky with your borrowed bow, you'd be guilty of poaching. And medieval poaching penalties are not fines or community service. We're talking mutilation, blinding, in some cases, death. A law from the Norman period prescribed that poachers caught in the act should have their eyes gouged out and be castrated. Later reforms, because apparently that was too harsh, reduced penalties to imprisonment, massive fines, or the loss of a hand. But enforcement was inconsistent and often depended on who you were and who caught you. Historians still argue whether forest laws were actually enforced as brutally as the written codes suggest, or whether they were mostly scare tactics. Court records show that many poachers were fined rather than mutilated, and some historians believe the horrific punishments were rarely carried out in practice. But rarely isn't never. And the fact that you're even having to think about this while sitting on a horse in a cold forest is testament to how seriously medieval society took the ownership of game animals. You hear movement in the underbrush and instinctively reach for your bow before remembering that you don't actually want to shoot anything without permission. A roe deer, a small, delicate species, emerges about 30 yards away, sees you, freezes for a heartbeat, then bounds away. Beautiful animal. Also, completely illegal for you to hunt without explicit authorization. The noble hosting this hunt has rights to red deer in this forest, but roe deer might fall under different jurisdiction, or might be reserved for a different season, or might be protected this year to allow population recovery. You don't know, and not knowing is dangerous. The forest itself is managed with paranoid precision. Those markers on the trees, they indicate boundaries, ownership, cutting rights. Medieval forests aren't wilderness. They're economic resources carefully controlled by the nobility and crown. Commoners who live near the forest might have rights to collect fallen wood, but not to cut living trees. To pasture pigs during pannage season when acorns are abundant, but only their pigs, marked and counted, or to gather certain plants, but not others. Taking a living tree could result in fines. Cutting down an oak without permission could land you in serious legal trouble, because oaks are valuable timber and also happen to be excellent deer habitat. So cutting them harms both the lumber supply and the hunting. Your horse has wandered toward a small clearing where you notice something that makes your stomach drop. Snares. Someone has set up wire snares for small game, partially hidden in the grass. These are almost certainly illegal. Snares are considered engines, indiscriminate hunting tools that can't distinguish between permitted and protected game. Nobles hunt with dogs, horses, and skill. Poachers use snares, and getting caught with them means you're automatically guilty of something. You should probably move away from this area immediately, but you're also morbidly fascinated. Someone local, probably a desperate commoner trying to feed their family. Set these snares knowing full well the risk. Hares and rabbits are valuable protein, and if you're starving, the threat of punishment might seem worth it compared to the certainty of hunger. But there's also a darker possibility. These snares could be a test. Forest wardens sometimes set up fake violations to catch potential poachers or to entrap people. If you were to take anything from these snares, or even to disturb them, someone watching from the trees could accuse you of poaching. It sounds paranoid, but medieval legal culture was paranoid. Property was everything, and property rights were enforced through elaborate systems of surveillance, informants, and surprise inspections. A horn sounds closer now. Your group is looking for you. You should follow the sound, rejoin the hunt, and pretend you were just momentarily separated rather than hopelessly lost. But as you turn your horse toward the horn calls, you're struck by how alienating this forest feels. At home, you might hike through woods and feel peaceful, connected to nature, free. Here, every tree belongs to someone. Every animal belongs to someone. Every plant has a legal status. You're not communing with nature, you're trespassing through someone's living property portfolio, and one wrong move could have consequences you can't afford. You catch up with your group just as they're reorganizing after chasing a stag that ultimately escaped into a thick brake the horses couldn't penetrate. The knight leading your group is frustrated but philosophical. Not every hunt ends with a kill, and the real stag thereafter, the one the harborer spotted this morning, hasn't been roused yet. You take your position in the line again, relieved to be back with the group but also newly anxious about everything you're doing. Every arrow you're carrying is borrowed. If you lost one in the forest, would that be a problem? If your horse damaged a sapling during the chase, would someone assess damages? You're thinking like a medieval person now, calculating risks and obligations, and it's exhausting. The beaters are driving a new area, and you can hear them shouting, crashing through undergrowth, deliberately making noise. Medieval hunting isn't subtle. It's organized chaos designed to panic animals into making mistakes. The dogs are baying again, and you hear a different horn call, one you don't recognize. The knight translates. The main group has roused the stag. The real hunt is about to begin. Your group is redirected to cut off a potential escape route. You're riding hard now, trying to reach a specific ridge before the stag does. Your horse is laboring, breathing hard, and you're leaning forward in the saddle, trying to help its balance while branches whip past your head. You emerge onto the ridge just in time to see, in the valley below, the stag. He's magnificent. A mature red deer with a full set of antlers, 12 points at least, his coat dark and thick for winter. He's running with a grace that seems impossible for something so large, bounding over obstacles, head held high despite the heavy antlers. Behind him, the pack of running hounds is in full cry, their baying echoing off the hills. Behind the dogs, riders are streaming through the forest, the lord in the lead on a powerful destrier, and even from here you can see the focused intensity on his face. This is what he came for. This is what everyone came for. The stag is heading toward your ridge, toward the gap you're supposed to be blocking. The knight is shouting instructions. Spread out, make yourselves large, turn the stag back toward the main group. You move into position, your horse dancing nervously as the stag approaches. He's closer now, and you can see the steam from his breath, the foam at his mouth from exertion, the wild intelligence in his eyes. He's terrified and exhausted, and he's looking for any escape. He sees your line and swerves, running parallel to the ridge instead of trying to break through. Perfect, you're doing your job, keeping him in the hunt. The main group is closing in, and the dogs are only yards behind the stag now. This is the moment when someone will make the kill shot, and despite everything, despite being cold, scared, lost, and completely out of your depth, you're caught up in the primal excitement of it. That stag represents success, status, and several days' worth of excellent meat. But the stag has one more trick. He suddenly pivots and runs straight downhill, toward a stream you hadn't noticed. Deer are excellent swimmers, and if he reaches that water, he might escape. The dogs plunge in after him, the water barely slowing them down. Riders are pulling up at the bank, looking for crossing points. And the stag is in the middle of the stream, struggling against the current but still moving, still fighting. The lord has dismounted and knocked an arrow. He's going to take the shot from the bank while the stag is vulnerable in the water. Everyone is watching, silent now except for the baying hounds and the rush of water. The lord draws, aims, and releases. The arrow flies true, striking the stag in the chest. The animal staggers, and the allants, the heavy catch dogs, surge forward to bring him down. What happens next is brutal and efficient. The dogs drag the stag to the shallow water near the bank. The huntmaster is there immediately, knife out, and delivers the killing blow to the throat. The stag's struggles cease. The hounds are called off and rewarded with praise and pieces of bread soaked in blood, their traditional reward. And everyone is congratulating the lord on an excellent shot, an excellent hunt, a magnificent animal. You're watching from the ridge, still mounted, and you're feeling something complicated. Relief that it's over, awe at the coordination and skill involved, sadness for the stag which fought so hard and still lost. And underneath it all, the growing realization that you contributed almost nothing to this success. You turned one deer, badly, got lost, and watched the finale from a distance. By medieval standards, you're basically a tourist who happened to be there when the real hunters did the work. The forest laws that protected that stag, the complex hierarchy of game animals, the precise boundaries of who could hunt what and where, all of that was designed to preserve moments like this for the nobility. Commoners couldn't hunt deer not just because of class snobbery, but because hunting was a demonstration of noble privilege, skill, and power. You were allowed to participate today as a guest, but you were never really part of it. The forest, the deer, the entire experience belongs to people born into the system, and you're just borrowing access. As your group rides down to join the others at the kill site, you notice your hands are shaking slightly. Adrenaline, cold, and the weird emotional cocktail of witnessing something both beautiful and violent. The borrowed bow on your back feels heavier now, and you're trying to remember if you brought a second pair of gloves, because these are soaked through from your horse's sweat and your own nervous grip, and the day is far from over. The celebration at the kill site is brief. There's work to be done, and standing around in wet clothes next to a cold stream is a good way to invite illness. The huntmaster is already organizing the next phase, which you soon realize is going to be just as complicated as the hunt itself. Medieval hunting isn't just about making the kill. It's about tracking, interpreting signs, and demonstrating knowledge that takes years to acquire. Knowledge you absolutely don't have. You're about to spend the next several hours proving this in increasingly humiliating ways. The first challenge, reading the terrain. The huntmaster is examining the area where the stag was bedded down earlier, before the hunt began. He's looking at broken twigs, disturbed leaves, the pattern of hoof prints in the soft earth, and he's narrating his findings to the assembled hunters like he's reading a book. "See here," he says, pointing to a scrape on a tree trunk about chest-high. The stag was rubbing his antlers. The bark is fresh. This was done this morning just after dawn. And here, he gestures to a series of impressions in the mud. He pawed the ground, agitated, likely because he scented the limor hounds when we first began tracking. Everyone is nodding along, making appreciative noises about the huntmaster's skill. You're squinting at the mud, trying to see anything that looks like a deliberate pawing pattern versus just random deer-foot-shaped holes. It all looks like mud to you, but medieval hunters can read these signs the way you might read a text message. Quickly, accurately, extracting information that seems obvious once pointed out but invisible before. The huntmaster moves to a pile of deer droppings because yes, we're examining feces now, and actually picks one up to squeeze it between his fingers. You try not to visibly react to this. "Still warm inside," he announces. "The stag bedded here within the last 2 hours. Good size, healthy animal, feeding well." He's assessing the stag's diet and health from its droppings, which is simultaneously impressive and revolting. Medieval hunting manuals go into extraordinary detail about dung interpretation. The size, shape, moisture content, and color of droppings can tell you the animal's species, sex, age, health, and how recently it passed through. The scatology as a professional skill, and these people take it seriously. Someone asks you to examine a track and give your opinion on whether it's from the stag or a different deer. You kneel down, look at the hoof print in the mud, and have absolutely no idea. It's deer-shaped. That's the extent of your analysis. You mumble something non-committal about it possibly being from a younger animal, based on nothing. And the huntmaster politely corrects you. "No, see the depth here and the spacing? Definitely our stag. You can tell by the weight distribution and the length of stride." "Oh, right. Obviously." You stand up, covered in mud, your ignorance confirmed. The group begins moving to a different area where beaters reported seeing another deer earlier. As you ride, the knight who's been leading your group tries to be helpful and quiz you on horn calls. "What's the call for when a hart goes to soil?" he asks. Soil means taking to water. You learned that earlier when the stag ran into the stream. But the specific horn call? You have no idea. There are dozens of these calls, each with a specific melody and meaning. And you've been here for roughly 6 hours and cannot distinguish any of them beyond. Someone is blowing a horn. You attempt to guess. Maybe a rising tone? And the knight demonstrates the correct call, which is actually a complex pattern of long and short notes that you'll never remember. It's based on the old Norman hunting traditions, he explains. Each call has been passed down for generations. My father taught me when I was 7. Of course he did. Medieval nobles start training for this lifestyle before they can write their own names. You're trying to learn in a day what they spent childhoods mastering. The beaters have found signs of a boar. The energy shifts immediately. Boar hunting is more dangerous than deer hunting, and everyone knows it. Wild boars are aggressive, powerful, and equipped with tusks that can disembowel a dog or a horse. Hunting them requires different tactics, different dogs, the heavy allants are essential, and a different kind of courage. The Lord decides to pursue this boar, and your group is being repositioned again to cut off escape routes. As you ride into position, you start actually looking at the forest floor, trying to practice what the huntmaster demonstrated. Is that a boar track? It's wider than a deer track, rounder, with clear marks from dew claws. You're about to point this out when you realize the knight has already seen it and is using it to navigate. Your discovery would just announce that you're several seconds behind everyone else in observing the obvious. The undergrowth here is thicker, thornier. Your borrowed cloak catches on brambles constantly, and you're accumulating tears faster than you can free yourself. The fabric is wool, expensive, warm, and now being shredded by your incompetence at navigating dense forest. Each rip is probably deductible from some social credit you didn't know you had. Medieval clothing isn't cheap or easily replaced, and destroying borrowed items is the kind of thing that gets you labeled as careless and unreliable. A shout from ahead, the boar has been roused. You hear it before you see it. A deep grunting and the sound of something large crashing through brush. The dogs are going wild. They're baying different from how they sounded during the deer hunt. More aggressive, more urgent. And then the boar breaks cover about 40 yards away, and your first thought is how much bigger it is than you expected. This isn't a cute farm pig. This is a massive wild boar, probably 300 pounds, with coarse dark hair, a sloped muscular back, and tusks that curve up from its lower jaw like ivory daggers. It's running straight across your sight line, and it is terrifyingly fast for something so large. The allants are pursuing, trying to catch up and engage, but the boar has a head start, and it's using every bit of its strength to maintain the lead. Historians still argue whether medieval hunters exaggerated the danger of boar hunting in their accounts and literature, or whether boars really were as deadly as described. But watching this animal move, seeing the power in its shoulders and the weapons in its mouth, you're inclined to believe every dramatic hunting story you've ever read. This thing could kill you, easily. And unlike the deer, which was trying to escape, the boar might actually decide to fight. The boar changes direction, angling toward your position. The knight is shouting for everyone to hold the line, make noise, turn it back. You're yelling. Some wordless sound that's half fear, half compliance, and waving your arms. Your horse is less convinced about this plan and is backing up despite your attempts to control it. Horses are prey animals, and every instinct is telling yours that standing in the path of an angry boar is a terrible idea. The boar swerves away from your line, but not before you get a clear look at its face. Small piggy eyes, foam at the mouth, and an expression that can only be described as furious. It plunges back into thick cover, the dogs still in pursuit, and everyone is chasing again. The forest becomes a blur of branches, shouting, baying hounds, and your horse making decisions about the safest path while you just try not to fall off. You emerge into a small clearing and see the boar has turned to fight. It's backed against a fallen log, facing the pack of allants, and it's making a stand. The dogs are circling, lunging in and out, trying to find an opening. The boar is swinging its head back and forth, those tusks promising serious injury to any dog that gets too close. One allant gets brave and darts in. The boar pivots with shocking speed and catches the dog with a glancing blow. The dog yelps and retreats, limping, blood on its shoulder. The huntmaster is there, armed with a boar spear, a specialized weapon with a wide blade and a crossbar behind it to prevent the boar from running up the shaft at you even after being impaled. He's positioning himself carefully, waiting for the right moment. Other experienced hunters are forming a loose circle, cutting off escape routes. You're supposed to be part of this circle, but your horse absolutely refuses to get any closer to the boar and is dancing sideways, ears pinned back. The huntmaster feints, drawing the boar's attention, and another hunter moves in from the side. The boar charges the second hunter, who plants his spear and catches the animal in the shoulder. It's not a killing blow. The boar is too strong, too angry, and it thrashes against the spear, trying to reach its attacker. The huntmaster takes advantage of the distraction and drives his own spear into the boar's side, aiming for the vitals. The boar screams, a sound you didn't know pigs could make, high-pitched and awful, and the fight goes out of it suddenly. The Alliance rush in for the finish. It's over in seconds, but the aftermath is chaos. The injured dog needs attention. The huntmaster is examining the gash, calling for cloth to bind it. The boar is being bled out, its blood steaming on the cold ground. And everyone is talking at once, reliving the moment, analyzing the tactics, praising the Lord's dogs and the huntmaster's skill. You're on the periphery of this celebration, still mounted because you never quite made it into the action, still catching your breath from the fear and adrenaline. Someone notices your torn cloak and makes a joke about the brambles fighting back. There's laughter. It's good-natured, mostly, but it still stings. You're the comic relief in a medieval hunting party, the person who provides entertainment through incompetence rather than contributing to success. And there's still so much day left, so many more opportunities to prove you don't belong here. The knight from your group rides over and, in a moment of genuine kindness, shows you what to look for when tracking boar versus deer. The boar's rootings, places where it dug up the forest floor searching for food, are distinctive. The tracks are different. Even the smell is different. Boar have a musky odor that, once you know it, is unmistakable. He's trying to help you learn, giving you tools to be slightly less useless. You're grateful and embarrassed in equal measure. As the group prepares to move on, there are still hours of hunting ahead. You look at the dead boar and the injured dog in your shredded cloak, and you calculate how much of this experience you can endure before you're allowed to claim exhaustion and return to the lodge. The answer is several more hours, at least. Medieval hunting parties don't quit after one kill. They hunt until dusk, or until the horses are exhausted, or until they've filled their bag limit for the day. You're maybe a third of the way through this ordeal, and you've already failed in ways you didn't know were possible. Your horse shifts under you and you automatically adjust your seat. At least you're getting better at staying mounted. Small victories. You'll take them where you can find them, because the forest certainly isn't offering any larger ones. The afternoon light is slanting through the trees at that golden angle that would be beautiful if you weren't so cold, sore, and desperate for this to end. Your group has rejoined the main hunting party near a small clearing where the servants have set up a temporary rest station. Essentially a few cloaks spread on the ground and some provisions brought from the lodge. Everyone is dismounting, and you slide off your horse with all the grace of a sack of wet grain. Your legs are trembling from hours in the saddle, and when your feet hit the ground, you nearly collapse because your knees have forgotten how to lock. No one else seems to be having this problem. They're stretching, chatting, handing off their horses to servants, looking tired but functional. You're clinging to your horse's saddle for support and hoping it looks casual. The rest is brief, just long enough to drink some weak ale and eat some hard bread and cheese that a servant produces from a saddlebag. You're ravenous despite the greasy breakfast hours ago, and you demolish your portion in a way that definitely violates some medieval etiquette about eating slowly and daintily. The woman who ate breakfast with such composure is nibbling her bread in small, controlled bites while discussing the morning's hunt. You've got crumbs on your chin and you're already eyeing the remaining food, wondering if asking for more would mark you as gluttonous. The Lord is in high spirits, the stag and the boar are excellent trophies, and the day has been successful by any measure. He's decided to pursue one more quarry before heading back. A hart that the harborer reported seeing in the northern section of the forest. A hart is a mature male red deer, essentially another stag, and hunting one would cap off the day perfectly. Everyone agrees this is a wonderful plan. You're trying to agree enthusiastically while internally screaming because your entire body hurts and you're pretty sure you're developing saddle sores. As the group remounts and prepares to move, you notice something that sends a spike of anxiety through you. Your borrowed bow is missing an arrow. You had 6 when you started. Now you have 5. At some point during the chaos of the boar hunt, you lost one. Did it fall out of your quiver? Did you accidentally drop it? You have no idea, and now you're trying to decide if you should mention this. The arrows are borrowed, like everything else you're using. Losing one might be a minor issue or it might be a major breach of trust. You decide to stay quiet and hope no one counts them. The ride to the northern forest is longer, and you're getting a full tour of medieval horsemanship's effect on the human body. Your inner thighs are raw from friction. Your lower back aches from the saddle's angle. Your shoulders are tight from holding the reins and trying to maintain posture. Your hands, even in gloves, are developing blisters where you've been gripping too hard. And there's a special kind of soreness developing in places you didn't know could get sore from riding. The kind of discomfort that makes every step of the horse's gait a small torture. The forest here is older, the trees larger and more widely spaced. It feels more like the wild, untouched woodland you imagined medieval forests to be. The light is dimmer under the heavy canopy, and sounds carry differently. The huntmaster is conferring with his harborer about where the hart was last seen, and you're close enough to overhear their discussion. They're talking about the hart's harbor, its preferred resting place, and debating whether it will be in the thick cover near the stream or on higher ground where it can watch for threats. This is detective work, piecing together clues from animal behavior and habitat knowledge that spans lifetimes. The decision is made to split into two groups. One will quietly approach the suspected harbor from downwind, while the other will position themselves along likely escape routes. You're in the second group again, the containment team, which is fine because it means less chance of you personally ruining the stalk. The experienced hunters are going to do the skilled work of sneaking up on a creature with better hearing and smell than any human, and you're going to stand in the forest trying to be useful if the animal runs your direction. The waiting is worse this time because you're stationary on your horse, and all your aches are settling in. You can't shift position too much because your horse interprets any movement as a command and starts walking. You can't dismount because you're supposed to be ready to ride if the hart appears. So you sit, trying to stay warm, trying to stay alert, watching the forest for any sign of movement while your mind wanders to thoughts of hot baths, soft beds, and any scenario where you're not on a horse. A flock of birds suddenly takes flight from the trees ahead. Something disturbed them. Your group tenses, watching, and then you see movement. The hart, and he's even more impressive than the stag from this morning. Massive, with a thick neck and antlers that seem too large for any animal to carry. He's moving at a walk, cautious, clearly aware that something is wrong but not yet panicked. He's heading roughly toward your position, though not directly at you. This time you remember your job. When the night signals, you start making noise, shouting, waving your arms, trying to appear threatening. Your horse, finally understanding what's expected, actually helps by snorting and stamping. The hart sees your line, evaluates his options, and turns sharply away, angling back toward where the main group is waiting. Perfect. You did it right. You actually contributed something useful, and the small surge of satisfaction you feel is probably disproportionate to the achievement, but you'll take it. The hart is running now, and the hounds are released. The chase is on again, but this hart is smarter than the morning stag. Instead of running in predictable patterns, he's doubling back, using the terrain, trying to lose the dogs. You're following at a distance, and you watch him splash through a stream, not to escape, but to break his scent trail, and emerge on the other side where he pauses for just a moment to assess whether it worked. It didn't. The hounds are too experienced and they pick up his trail immediately, but the intelligence of the move is striking. The hunt leads uphill onto rockier ground where the horses struggle for footing. Your horse is laboring, breathing hard, and you're leaning forward trying to help balance the weight. Around you, other riders are doing the same, everyone fighting the incline. The hart has the advantage here. He's built for this terrain, but the dogs are relentless and the mounted hunters know these hills. The hart makes his mistake. He heads into a small valley that seems like good cover but is actually a trap. The sides are too steep for him to escape quickly, and the hunters are able to position themselves at the exits. He's cornered, and he knows it. Instead of trying to run, he turns to face the dogs, lowering his antlers, ready to fight. This is the moment when hunts can turn deadly. A mature hart fighting for his life is dangerous to dogs, horses, and humans. The Lord dismounts. This kill is important enough that he wants to make it personally. He's armed with a sword rather than a bow, which seems insane to you but is apparently traditional for a hart of this quality. The sword means getting close, getting personal, risking injury. Two other experienced hunters move in to support him, keeping the hart's attention divided so the dogs don't get gored. What happens next is both choreographed and chaotic. The hunters work together, one feinting left while another moves right, the dogs lunging and retreating, keeping the heart pivoting, wearing him down. The Lord waits for his moment, and when the heart is fully focused on a threat from the side, he moves in and delivers a thrust to the neck, severing major blood vessels. The heart's legs buckle, and the fight goes out of him. The Alliance rush in to finish it, and within seconds it's over. The hunters are breathing hard, grinning with adrenaline and success. The Lord is accepting congratulations, his sword bloodied, his face flushed. This was a good kill, skillful, dangerous, successful. Everyone is celebrating, and you're watching from your horse about 50 yards away because you weren't part of the final approach. You were containment, backup, the B team making sure nothing escaped. Useful, technically, but not really part of the glory. As servants begin the work of bleeding the carcass and preparing it for transport, you notice the sun is getting low. The hunt is finally winding down. You've survived, barely, incompetently, but you've survived. The ride back to the lodge should be simple, just following the group, letting your exhausted horse carry you home. You allow yourself to relax slightly, to think about that evening meal and possibly sleeping for 12 hours straight. That's when your horse steps in a rabbit hole. It happens fast. The horse's front leg plunges down, the animal stumbles, you pitch forward over its neck. You have a split second to decide whether to try to stay on or to jump clear, and you make the wrong choice, you try to stay on. The horse recovers its footing, jerking upward violently, and you slide sideways out of the saddle and hit the ground hard on your shoulder. The impact knocks the breath out of you. You're lying on the forest floor, gasping, trying to remember how lungs work. Around you, people are reacting. Someone is catching your horse, someone is calling your name, someone is dismounting to check on you. The embarrassment is worse than the pain. You just fell off your horse, in front of everyone, during the easy part. After surviving the actual dangerous bits of the hunt, you fell off during the casual ride in the aftermath. Hands are helping you sit up. The knight from your group is asking if you're injured. You take inventory. Shoulder hurts, pride destroyed, but nothing seems broken. You insist you're fine, waving off help, trying to stand up on your own and immediately regretting it when pain shoots through your shoulder and your legs wobble. Someone brings your horse back. The animal looks embarrassed on your behalf, which feels unfair because this was partially its fault for stepping poorly. The Lord rides over, and you prepare for mockery, but instead he's almost kind. "The ground is treacherous here," he says. "My own brother broke his collarbone in this very stretch of forest. You're fortunate." It's a face-saving lie. Everyone saw what happened. Everyone knows it was a simple stumble, but he's offering you an out, and you take it gratefully. Medieval nobility might be brutal in their standards, but they also understand that publicly humiliating guests is bad form. You remount, this time with help because your shoulder is really starting to hurt, and the group continues toward the lodge. You're riding more carefully now, paranoid about every step your horse takes, and trying not to think about how you're going to feel tomorrow. If you're this sore and battered after one day, how do people do this regularly? How do they hunt multiple days in a row, season after season, year after year? The answer, you're realizing, is that they're trained from childhood. Their bodies are conditioned to this. Their skills are second nature, and they have healers, herbalists, and servants to help them recover. You have none of these advantages, and tomorrow you're going to wake up feeling like you were trampled by the very animals you spent today chasing. The lodge comes into view as the sun touches the horizon, and you've never been so happy to see a cold, smoky, uncomfortable building in your life. The hunt is over. You survived. Barely. And now comes the next ordeal. The butchering ceremony, where you'll get to watch experts do complicated things with knives while you stand around trying not to faint. The courtyard is already prepared when you arrive. Servants have laid out wooden boards and set up torches because the light is fading fast. The successful kills from today's hunt are being brought in. The stag from this morning, the boar, and the magnificent hart from the final chase. The animals are arranged in a specific order based on prestige, and you're learning that even dead game has a hierarchy. The hart gets the place of honor, closest to where the Lord will stand during the ceremony. Yes, ceremony. Because medieval nobles can't just butcher an animal like normal people. They have to make it a ritualized display of knowledge, skill, and social status. You dismount carefully, favoring your injured shoulder, and a servant takes your horse. Another servant appears with a basin of water and cloth. You're expected to wash your hands and face before participating in the butchering ritual. The water is cold and the cloth is rough, but you manage to remove some of the day's accumulation of dirt, sweat, and blood from that earlier branch scratch on your cheek. Around you, other hunters are doing the same, transforming from forest-stained riders into something approximating presentable nobles. The woman who's been showing you up all day somehow looks elegant even with leaves in her hair and mud on her hem. You look like you lost a fight with the forest, which, to be fair, you did. The huntmaster is organizing the butchering stations, assigning specific people to specific tasks. This isn't just random cutting. This is the unmaking or breaking of the deer, a technical process with specific cuts that must be made in specific order by people of specific ranks. The Lord will make the first cut naturally. Then various important guests will be invited to make subsequent cuts under the huntmaster's instruction. And you're realizing with creeping horror that you might be expected to participate. The ceremony begins with the heart. The animal has been positioned on its back, legs splayed, and the Lord approaches with a specialized knife, narrow, very sharp, with a distinctive handle. The crowd, because yes, more people have gathered, including servants and even some locals from nearby who have rights to certain portions of the animal, watches in silence. The huntmaster describes what the Lord is about to do. The assay, the first cut that opens the animal and confirms the quality of the meat. The Lord makes a precise incision from the throat down the belly, opening the hide without puncturing the organs beneath. It's skillful work, and the cut is clean and straight. The huntmaster nods approvingly and makes a comment about the animal's excellent condition. The layer of fat is good, the muscles well developed, all signs of a healthy, well-fed deer. This is partly practical assessment and partly performance, announcing to everyone present that this was a worthy quarry and that the hunt was successful by all measures. Next comes the removal of certain choice organs. The heart, liver, and kidneys are extracted carefully and set aside on a clean cloth. These will be prepared specially, possibly tonight at dinner, as delicacies. The huntmaster is explaining the significance of each organ. The heart shows the animal's stamina, the liver its overall health. He's reading the heart's biology like it's a report card, and everyone is listening attentively because this knowledge is valuable. Understanding game anatomy makes you a better hunter. Then the huntmaster looks at the assembled guests and begins selecting people to make the next cuts. A visiting lord is invited to separate the shoulders. A knight is assigned to remove the haunches. And then, oh no, the huntmaster is gesturing to you. Perhaps our friend would like to assist with the flaying? Flaying means removing the hide, skinning the animal, and you have absolutely no idea how to do this. But everyone is watching, and declining would be an insult to the Lord and an admission of complete incompetence. So you step forward, accept the knife the huntmaster offers, and try not to shake visibly. The huntmaster positions you at the heart's hind leg and explains what you need to do. Make a cut around the leg above the hoof, then carefully work the knife between the hide and the flesh, using your other hand to pull the skin away as you cut. He demonstrates on one leg, his knife moving smoothly, the hide peeling back cleanly. It looks easy when he does it. Now you try the other side, he says, stepping back. You position your knife and make the circular cut around the leg. So far, so good. Then you start trying to separate the hide, and immediately you're using too much force, cutting too deep. The huntmaster's hand covers yours, guiding you to the correct angle. Let the knife do the work, he murmurs. The hide wants to come free. You're just helping it along. You try again, more gently this time, and the hide does separate more easily. You're sweating despite the cold, hyper-aware that everyone is watching your clumsy technique. You manage to flay about 8 inches of hide before the huntmaster mercifully takes over, explaining that the next section requires more experience. You step back, hand shaking slightly from tension, and a servant takes the knife from you. You didn't completely embarrass yourself. You made the cuts the huntmaster asked for without ruining the hide or injuring yourself. But you also didn't display any particular skill. You were adequate, which in a gathering of experts might actually be worse than being entertainingly bad. The butchering continues with other participants making their assigned cuts. There's a specific order to this. First, the hide comes completely off, then the carcass is divided into major sections. The haunches, back legs, shoulders, front legs, and saddle, the back, are separated. The rib cage is opened and cleaned. Every cut has a name, and the huntmaster narrates each one, sometimes correcting technique, sometimes offering praise. Historians still argue whether these elaborate butchering ceremonies were primarily about practical meat processing or about demonstrating noble knowledge and maintaining social hierarchy. But watching it unfold, you suspect it's both. The meat needs to be processed, yes, but it could be done much faster and simpler if servants were just allowed to handle it. The ritual is the point. The boar is next, and the process is similar but with important differences. Boar hide is thicker and tougher. The meat is darker and needs to be handled differently. It spoils faster than venison, so certain cuts are salted immediately for preservation. The huntmaster explains that boar should be hung for only a day or two maximum before being cooked, whereas venison improves with longer aging. This is practical knowledge that could mean the difference between delicious meat and food poisoning, and everyone is paying attention. As the butchering progresses, different parts of the animals are being distributed according to complex rules. The lord gets first choice of cuts, naturally. The huntmaster receives specific portions as payment for his services. The feuderers, dog handlers, get certain organs and scraps to feed the hounds. Other servants receive portions based on their rank and role. Even some of the local poor who are waiting at the edge of the courtyard will receive the lowest quality bits. Gristle, bones for soup, organ meats that nobles consider beneath them. Nothing is wasted. A successful hunt feeds dozens of people through this carefully managed distribution system. You're standing near the butchering station, trying to stay out of the way but close enough to seem engaged, when you notice something disturbing. Blood is everywhere. It's on the boards, soaking into the ground, splattered on the servants' clothes, and despite your earlier hand-washing, it's now on your hands again from when you were flaying. The smell is overwhelming: raw meat, blood, and the vaguely gamey scent of wild animals. Your stomach, empty since that meager lunch hours ago, is starting to protest. The light is almost gone now, and the torches cast flickering shadows that make the whole scene look more medieval and ritualistic than it did in daylight. Servants are working efficiently, wrapping meat in cloth, carrying portions to the kitchens, hanging certain cuts in the cold storage rooms. The hounds are being rewarded with their traditional portions, specific organs and blood-soaked bread, and they're devouring them with enthusiastic, messy abandon. Dogs' faces are red with blood. The courtyard is becoming an abattoir, and you're stuck in the middle of it, trying to breathe through your mouth to minimize the smell. The lord approaches the group of assembled guests and thanks everyone for their participation in a successful hunt. He specifically praises several people by name for their contributions: good shots, excellent dog handling, skillful tracking. Your name is not mentioned, which is fine because you didn't actually contribute anything praiseworthy. You stood where you were told and occasionally made noise. The modern equivalent would be getting a participation trophy, except medieval society doesn't believe in those, so you just get politely ignored. As the formal butchering concludes, people begin drifting toward the lodge's entrance. There's time before dinner to wash properly, change clothes if you brought extras, you didn't, and rest briefly. Your shoulder is throbbing where you landed on it, and you're walking with a slight limp from the saddle sores and general soreness. You must look as bad as you feel because a servant asks if you need assistance reaching your chamber. You decline, you have some pride left apparently, though not much, and make your way inside alone. The corridor to your shared sleeping chamber is dim and smoky, lit only by occasional torches. You can hear voices from other rooms, laughter, the sounds of people recovering from the day's exertions in the company of friends. You reach your chamber and find it empty. Your roommates are elsewhere, probably in the Great Hall already, being social and competent. You sit on the edge of your straw mattress and assess the damage. Your clothes are ruined. The borrowed cloak has multiple tears. Your tunic is stained with mud, sweat, and now blood from the butchering. Your hose have a rip in one knee from when you fell off your horse. Everything smells like smoke, horse, and forest. You peel off the outer layers and find that your linen undershirt is soaked through with sweat. There's a basin of water in the corner, the same one with ice on it from this morning, and you use it to wash your face and hands, the cold water shocking but necessary. You have no clean clothes to change into. This is what you're wearing to dinner. You put the least damaged outer layers back on, try to brush some of the dried mud off with your hands, and accept that you're going to be the grubbiest person at the evening meal. In a gathering where appearance matters, where clothing communicates status, you're about to sit down looking like a servant who had a particularly bad day. And there's nothing you can do about it except own it and hope people are too polite to comment. From somewhere in the lodge, a bell rings, the signal for dinner. You stand up, your body protesting every movement, and head toward the great hall. The butchering is done. The hunt is over. Now comes the next test. Navigating a formal medieval feast where the food is weird, the etiquette is complex, and your every move is being judged. You smell like blood and horse. Your clothes are torn. Your shoulder hurts. And you're expected to make pleasant conversation over multiple courses of food you may not be able to identify. At least you can't fall off a horse during dinner. That's something. The great hall has been transformed since this morning. The tables are now covered with linens, not pristine white like you'd see in movies, but functional cloth in various states of wear and cleanliness. Candles and torches provide flickering light that's somehow both too bright and too dim, creating shadows that make the room feel larger and more intimidating than it is. The fire in the central hearth is roaring again, and the hall is already warm and smoky. You enter quietly, trying to determine where you're supposed to sit, and immediately realize this is going to be complicated. Medieval seating arrangements are a minefield of social hierarchy. Where you sit announces your status to everyone in the room. The Lord sits at the high table, elevated on a dais at one end of the hall, with his most important guests arranged around him in descending order of rank. Everyone else fills the lower tables, and your position relative to the high table, your distance from the Lord, and even which side of the table you're on all communicate precise information about your social worth. You're hovering near the entrance, trying to figure this out, when a servant approaches and guides you to a seat at one of the lower tables, roughly in the middle of the room. Not the worst position, that would be at the very end, near the servant's entrance, but definitely not prestigious. You sit on a wooden bench between two people you vaguely recognize from the hunt. The man on your left is a minor noble who did reasonably well today. The woman on your right is someone's wife or sister. You're not sure which, and she's eyeing your torn, stained clothing with barely concealed distaste. You're acutely aware that everyone else has managed to clean up at least somewhat, while you look like you just walked out of the forest. This is not how you wanted to make an impression. The table in front of you has been set with bread trenchers, those thick slabs of stale bread that will serve as your plates. There are cups for wine or ale, a few shared knives. You still have your personal knife, thankfully, and some salt cellars scattered along the table. Salt is expensive, and the quality and amount of salt at different tables is another status indicator. Your table has salt, but it's coarse and grayish rather than the fine white salt you can see at the high table. Even the seasoning is hierarchical. A servant appears with pitchers of wine and ale. You're about to ask for ale when you notice everyone else is accepting wine, so you do the same to avoid standing out further. The wine arrives in your cup. It's spiced, warm, and much stronger than anything you'd drink at home. One sip and you can feel it, sweet and cloying with hints of cinnamon and cloves. This is Hippocras, a medieval spiced wine that's served at feasts, and it's going to make the evening very interesting if you're not careful about pace. The Lord stands at the high table, and the room falls silent. He gives a short speech thanking God for the successful hunt, praising his guests' skill and courage, and announcing that tonight's feast will feature the fruits of their labor. Everyone applauds politely. Then he signals the chaplain, who leads a prayer in Latin naturally, blessing the food and the gathering. You bow your head and move your lips along with words you don't understand, hoping you're approximating the right rhythm. The first course arrives. Pottage. It's a thick stew that's been simmering since this morning, and yours contains chunks of vegetables, grains, and some unidentifiable meat that might be mutton or might be yesterday's leftovers repurposed. You ladle some onto your bread trencher and eat with your spoon, one of the few utensils provided. The pottage is actually good, rich, salty, warming. Around you, people are eating steadily while maintaining conversation, and you're trying to do both but mostly concentrating on not spilling. The second course is where things get medieval, whole roasted birds. Not chicken as you know it, but smaller game birds, possibly woodcock or thrush, roasted entire with their heads still on. They're presented on platters, and you're expected to serve yourself by tearing off pieces with your hands and your knife. The man next to you demonstrates, efficiently dismembering his bird and transferring select pieces to his trencher. You attempt the same and immediately make a mess. The bird is greasy, the joints don't separate where you expect them to, and you end up with your hands covered in fat and a mangled carcass that looks like it was attacked rather than carved. The woman on your right makes a small sound of disapproval. You try to wipe your hands on the communal cloth that's being passed around. This is normal, everyone does it. But you're aware that you're using it more than anyone else because you're messier than anyone else. Medieval table manners exist, and they're detailed. Don't talk with your mouth full. Don't reach across other people. Don't pick your teeth at the table. Don't wipe your greasy hands on your clothes. You're trying to follow these rules while also actually eating, and it's harder than it should be. The third course brings the triumph of the day: venison from the stag. It's been roasted and arrives on large platters, already carved into portions. This is the meat everyone was waiting for, the reward for today's effort, and it's distributed with great ceremony. The high table receives the best cuts first, then the serving makes its way down to your table. By the time it reaches you, the choicest pieces are gone, but you still get a respectable portion of meat that's been seasoned with herbs and cooked to a darkness that suggests it's been over the fire for hours. You bite into the venison, and it's simultaneously delicious and challenging. The flavor is rich and gamey, much stronger than modern farm-raised meat. It's also tougher than you expected. You're chewing much longer than seems polite, trying to break down the fibers while the conversation continues around you. The man next to you is discussing the hunt with someone across the table, reliving the moment when the stag turned into the stream. You're not included in this conversation because you weren't part of that moment, but you're close enough to hear every word and be reminded of your marginal participation. More courses arrive in succession. A fish dish that seems out of place until you remember that medieval feasts mix meat and fish freely. Roasted vegetables in a sauce that's heavy on the pepper. Actual black pepper, expensive and used liberally to show off the Lord's wealth. A pie containing what you're told is boar meat but tastes more like organ meat, possibly the liver from this morning's kill. You eat cautiously, trying everything because refusing food is rude, but also aware that your modern stomach is not prepared for this onslaught of heavy, rich, unfamiliar flavors. The conversation at your table has turned to hunting stories from previous years. Someone is describing a boar hunt that went wrong, where the animal gored a dog and nearly killed a servant before being brought down. Everyone has stories like this: close calls, impressive kills, legendary animals that got away. You have nothing to contribute. Your hunting experience consists of one day of being incompetent, and that's not the kind of story that enhances your reputation. Historians still argue whether medieval feasts were primarily about eating or about social performance. But sitting in this hall, watching people juggle conversation, food, and status maintenance, you're certain it's the latter. The food is almost secondary to the real purpose. Being seen eating with the right people, demonstrating proper manners, telling stories that establish your credentials, and navigating the complex web of relationships and obligations that defines noble society. The woman on your right finally speaks to you, asking politely how you enjoyed the hunt. It's a simple question with a complicated answer. You can't say you were terrified and incompetent. You can't admit you have no idea what you're doing. So you smile and say something generic about it being an impressive display of skill and well organized by the huntmaster. She nods, clearly recognizing this as a non-answer, and returns to her own meal. You've been assessed and found wanting even in conversation. More wine is poured. You're on your third cup, or maybe fourth, you've lost count, and the room is getting warmer and fuzzier around the edges. The noise level is rising as people get drunker and more animated. Someone at the high table is telling a joke you can't quite hear, and there's laughter. Someone at a nearby table is singing, badly, but with enthusiasm, and others are joining in. The feast is evolving from formal dinner into something looser and more chaotic. A servant brings around a bowl of water and cloth for hand washing between courses. You dip your greasy fingers into the water. It's already dirty from everyone before you, and make a token effort at cleaning up. The cloth is damp and smells like rosewater, a small luxury in the midst of all this meat and smoke. Your trencher bread is now completely saturated with juices, fats, and sauces, a soggy mess that you're supposed to eat at the end of the meal. Some people do, tearing off chunks and consuming them. Others leave them for the servants or the poor. You attempt a bite. It's edible barely, like soaking wet savory bread pudding, and decide you've eaten enough. The final course is subtleties, elaborate dishes designed more for display than eating. A pastry sculpture of a stag, complete with real antlers attached, is carried to the high table to applause. Someone has made a pie that releases live birds when cut, a trick that's apparently impressive though it seems unsanitary to you. These are the medieval equivalent of Instagram-worthy dishes, meant to demonstrate the host's wealth and the kitchen's skill. And then, between courses, the Lord makes an announcement. Tomorrow there will be another hunt. More deer have been spotted, and the weather should hold. And why waste a good hunting opportunity? Everyone at the high table agrees enthusiastically. Your table follows suit with slightly less enthusiasm, because most of these people are also sore and tired, though they'd never admit it. You're internally screaming. Another day? Another entire day of riding and failing and trying not to die or embarrass yourself further. But you smile and nod like everyone else, because saying, I can't possibly do that again. My body is destroyed and I'm terrible at this, would mark you as weak and unworthy. So you commit to another day of medieval hunting hell while your shoulder throbs and your thighs ache and your brain, foggy with wine, tries to process how you're going to survive this. The dinner is winding down. People are standing, stretching, moving toward different corners of the hall for continued socializing. The Lord and his close companions retreat to a private chamber. They have rooms where they can talk and drink without the lower status crowd. Everyone else is left in the hall or begins drifting toward the sleeping chambers. You stand up, and your legs are stiff from sitting on a hard bench for hours. Your stomach is uncomfortably full of strange meats and strong wine. And you're facing the prospect of walking back to your chamber through dark corridors while mildly drunk and exhausted. You make it to the corridor without incident and start navigating toward your chamber. The torches are burning lower now, creating deeper shadows and making it harder to see. You pass other guests heading to their own rooms, and there are murmured goodnights, polite acknowledgments. Someone you don't recognize claps you on the shoulder, the injured one, naturally, and says something about tomorrow's hunt that you don't quite catch. You smile and agree because that seems safest. Your chamber is dark when you arrive. Your roommates are either still in the hall or have gone elsewhere. You feel your way to your bed and sit down heavily. The straw mattress feels like luxury after hours on a wooden bench and in a saddle. You start removing your outer clothes, the torn, stained, ruined borrowed clothes that you'll somehow have to return or replace. Your body is discovering new places to ache. Your hands smell like meat and grease despite the washing. And you're so tired that the prospect of doing all this again tomorrow seems genuinely impossible. But you'll do it, because you're here, committed, and backing out would be social suicide in a world where reputation is everything. So you lie back on the straw, pull a wool blanket over yourself, and try not to think about tomorrow. Outside, you can hear the muffled sounds of the lodge settling for the night. Voices, footsteps, dogs barking. The general noise of dozens of people and animals sharing space. You close your eyes, your brain still spinning slightly from the wine, and hope that sleep comes quickly. Tomorrow is going to be even worse than today. But tonight, for a few hours, you can stop trying and just exist in the darkness, waiting for unconsciousness to take pity on you. You wake up to darkness and the sound of someone snoring, a deep, rattling sound that suggests medieval people had sleep apnea too, but no CPAP machines to help with it. For a disoriented moment, you can't remember where you are. Then your shoulder reminds you with a sharp throb. Your thighs scream when you try to shift position, and the smell of unwashed bodies, stale smoke, and dog hits you all at once. Right? Medieval hunting lodge. You survived dinner. Now you have to survive the night, which is turning out to be its own special kind of challenge. The chamber is pitch black. No streetlights, no phone screens, no ambient glow of modern civilization. Just absolute darkness broken occasionally by faint orange embers from somewhere. Maybe a dying fire in another room. You have no idea what time it is. Could be midnight, could be 3 in the morning, could be almost dawn. Time doesn't exist in this darkness except as the slow progression of discomfort and the periodic sounds of other people existing in uncomfortable proximity. One of your roommates, the one doing the snoring, is really committed to the performance. It's not just regular snoring. It's the kind that stops mid-breath, creating that horrible silence where you think maybe they've stopped breathing entirely, followed by a massive snort-gasp combination that jolts them partially awake before they settle back into the rhythm. Medieval people probably thought this was demonic possession. You think it's a sinus problem and you'd give anything for earplugs. You try to find a comfortable position on the straw mattress, which is somehow both too lumpy and too flat. The straw has compressed under your weight, creating gaps where you can feel the wooden boards beneath. Your injured shoulder can't take pressure, so you can't sleep on that side. Sleeping on your back makes the snoring from across the room feel like it's happening directly in your ear. Sleeping on your other side puts pressure on saddle sores you didn't know you had until just now. There is no good option, just varieties of discomfort to rotate through. The blanket, rough wool that probably hasn't been washed this season, is both too warm when you're under it and too cold when you're not. You're also wearing most of your clothes to bed because the room is freezing and medieval people don't have pajamas, they just sleep in their undergarments or, if it's cold enough, everything. So you're lying in a wool blanket, wearing a linen undershirt that's still slightly damp with yesterday's sweat, trying to find the temperature equilibrium between shivering and sweating. A new sound joins the symphony. Someone needs to use the garderobe. You hear them stumble out of bed, shuffle toward the door, and exit into the corridor. They don't have a candle. Apparently navigating the dark lodge at night is a skill everyone has except you, and you wonder how they avoid tripping over sleeping dogs or walking into walls. Minutes pass. They don't return. Either they got lost, or they're taking their time, or medieval toilet situations are even worse at night than during the day. You need to pee now too. The power of suggestion is strong, and your bladder is reminding you that you drank a lot of wine at dinner and probably should have visited the garderobe before bed. But the thought of navigating this dark lodge, finding the garderobe, and using it in complete darkness is enough to make you decide to hold it. You can hold it. You'll just think about something else. Anything else. Not water. Not rivers. Not the sound of liquid being poured. You're fine. A dog barks somewhere in the lodge. One of the hounds, probably, dreaming of the hunt or alerting to some noise only dog ears can detect. This triggers other dogs to bark in response, creating a cascade of canine communication that echoes through the stone corridors. Someone yells at the dogs to shut up. The dogs ignore this and continue barking for another minute before gradually settling. Silence returns, but it's a tense silence now, like everyone is waiting for the next disruption. Your roommate who left hasn't returned yet, and you're starting to genuinely worry. Did they fall in the garderobe pit? Get lost in the corridors? Decide to sleep somewhere else? Medieval lodges at night feel like horror movie settings. Dark, maze-like, full of unexpected hazards. You're just trying to sleep, not solve a mystery, but the absence is noticeable. The snoring roommate changes position, and the snoring briefly stops. Blessed silence. You're just starting to drift toward actual sleep when they resume, louder than before, with a new rhythm that includes whistling on the exhale. It's almost impressive how much noise one sleeping human can generate. You consider waking them up, but that seems rude. And besides, you'd have to navigate the dark room without tripping, and your legs are currently too stiff to move quickly. Somewhere in the lodge, a baby is crying. You didn't know there was a baby here. Maybe it belongs to a servant, maybe one of the noble families brought an infant. Either way, it's crying with the kind of insistence that suggests it's not going to stop anytime soon. The sound carries through the stone walls and wooden floors, a high-pitched wail that makes sleep impossible. You hear muffled voices, presumably parents trying to soothe the child, but medieval parenting techniques apparently aren't working. Your shoulder is really hurting now. The dull ache from earlier has sharpened into something more insistent, and you're wondering if you actually injured it worse than you thought when you fell off the horse. There's no ice, no ibuprofen, No way to address this except to lie here and endure it. Medieval pain management consists of alcohol, prayer, and hoping nothing is actually broken. You run through what you know about shoulder injuries and decide it's probably just badly bruised, not dislocated or fractured, but the uncertainty is unsettling. The missing roommate returns, finally, stumbling back into the chamber and feeling their way to their bed. They settle in with much rustling of straw and blankets, sigh heavily, and within minutes are asleep. Just like that, you've been lying here for what feels like hours, unable to sleep, while they went to the bathroom and came back and immediately achieved unconsciousness. It's unfair in a way that makes you irrationally angry. A new problem emerges. You're itchy. Maybe it's the straw, maybe it's the wool blanket, maybe it's the linen undershirt that hasn't been washed in days, or maybe, and this is the thought you're trying not to have, it's bedbugs or fleas. Medieval sleeping arrangements definitely include insects. Fleas are endemic, living in the straw, the rushes on the floor, the fur of all those dogs. Bedbugs are common in any shared sleeping space. You start to scratch, then stop because acknowledging the itch makes it worse. Now you're hyper-aware of every small sensation on your skin, real or imagined. Historians still argue whether medieval people actually slept worse than modern people or whether they were just adapted to different conditions, but lying here in the dark, you're convinced sleep quality was objectively terrible. No temperature control, no real privacy, no quiet, no comfort, just hours of darkness filled with sounds, smells, discomfort, and the vague anxiety that comes from being in an unfamiliar place surrounded by semi-strangers. You finally need to pee too badly to ignore it. You carefully sit up, trying not to disturb the mattress too much or make noise. You feel around for your shoes, soft leather things that you kicked off before bed, and pull them on. Then you stand, slowly, letting your eyes adjust to the absolute nothing of the darkness, and begin shuffling toward where you remember the door being. You make it 3 steps before your shin connects with something wooden. A chest, maybe, or someone's pack. The impact is surprisingly painful, and you have to bite down on a curse. You stand there, clutching your shin, waiting to see if you woke anyone. The snoring continues unchanged. No one stirs. You continue your blind navigation, hands out in front of you like a movie zombie, until you find the door. The corridor is marginally lighter. There's a torch burning somewhere, providing just enough glow to suggest shapes without really illuminating anything. You can see the vague outline of the corridor, the darker rectangles that are doorways, the bulk of what might be a sleeping dog or might be a pile of something. You remember the garderobe is to the left, down a bit, then right. Or was it right first? You head left, moving slowly, trailing one hand along the wall. You pass another chamber and hear the unmistakable sounds of a couple having sex. Medieval walls are not soundproof, and privacy is a concept that barely exists. You try to move past quickly and quietly, embarrassed despite the fact that they probably don't know you're out here and wouldn't care if they did. Medieval attitudes towards sex are different, less private, more practical, just another bodily function that happens in communal spaces. You find the garderobe through trial and error, 2 wrong turns and 1 room that turns out to be a storage closet before you locate the right door. Inside, it's darker than the corridor, and you have to feel your way to the bench with the hole in it. Using a medieval toilet in complete darkness while half-drunk and exhausted is an experience you won't forget. There's no toilet paper, just straw or cloth if you're lucky, though you can't find either in the dark. You do your best and hope medieval standards of cleanliness are as low as you suspect. The walk back to your chamber is slightly easier because you know the route now, but you still manage to step on something soft that squeaks indignantly. A cat, probably, or possibly a rat. You make it to your door, feel your way back to your bed, and collapse onto the straw with relief. The whole journey probably took 10 minutes but felt like an expedition. You try to settle back into sleep, but now you're wide awake, your brain unhelpfully running through everything that happened today and everything that will happen tomorrow. Another hunt. More riding. More opportunities to fail publicly. Your body is already protesting the idea, and tomorrow hasn't even started yet. How do people do this? How did medieval nobles live like this day after day, year after year, and not just collapse from exhaustion and accumulated injuries? The answer, you're realizing, is that they started young and built up tolerance. Their bodies adapted. Their skills improved. and they had servants to handle the recovery, people to prepare hot baths, apply poultices, provide massage, clean their clothes, maintain their equipment. You have none of that support system. You're doing this raw on hard mode and it shows. The baby has stopped crying. The snoring continues. A different roommate is making small sounds in their sleep, muttering, maybe dreaming. Outside, you can hear wind picking up, whistling through the gaps around the window shutters. The temperature in the room drops noticeably, and you pull the scratchy blanket higher, curling into yourself for warmth. You think about your bed at home, your actual bed with its mattress and pillows and clean sheets and central heating and the ability to adjust the temperature with a thermostat. The bathroom with running water and toilet paper and a light switch. The refrigerator with food that's fresh and safe and doesn't require butchering an animal in a courtyard ceremony. All the small conveniences of modern life that you never really appreciated until spending a day and night without them. But slowly, finally, exhaustion wins over discomfort. Your thoughts start to blur and drift. The snoring fades into background noise. The aches in your body become distant, manageable. And you slip into something that's not quite sleep but isn't full consciousness either, that medieval in-between state where you're vaguely aware of the passage of time and the sounds around you but not really processing them. You dream of forests and horses and deer that talk in horn call patterns. You dream of falling off things repeatedly while medieval nobles watch and take notes. You dream of trying to eat dinner with your hands while everyone else has somehow acquired forks. Anxiety dreams, stress dreams, the kind your brain produces when it's trying to process a day of being completely out of your element. And then, far too soon, there are hands on your shoulder again, the bad shoulder naturally, and a voice telling you it's time to wake up. It's still dark, it's still cold. Your body feels like it's made of pain and regret. But another day in the medieval hunting lodge is beginning, and you have to get up and do it all over again. The hunt continues whether you're ready or not. And you're definitely not ready, but that's never mattered in this world where competence is assumed and failure is public. You sit up slowly, every muscle protesting, and begin the process of becoming functional enough to face another day of medieval hunting. Your shoulder throbs, your legs are stiff, your head aches slightly from the wine, and somewhere in the lodge, dogs are already barking, horses are being prepared, and the huntmaster is planning the day's chase. You survived one day. Now you have to survive another. And after that, who knows? Maybe you'll get better at this. Or maybe you'll just get better at pretending you belong here while quietly suffering through every moment. Either way, there's no going back now. But for you, dear listener, the journey ends here. The hunting lodge fades into soft shadow. The sounds of preparation grow distant and gentle. The cold morning air becomes just a memory, something that touched you once but doesn't demand anything more. You've walked through the medieval world, felt its rough edges and harsh realities. You've survived the hunt, the feast, the long night in a strange bed. And now, as these images blur and soften, you can let them go. Let the straw mattress dissolve. Let the stone walls fade. Let the whole experience settle into the quiet place where stories rest when they're finished. Your own bed is waiting, soft, warm, familiar. Your own time is waiting, with its conveniences and comforts that the medieval world could never imagine. And sleep, real sleep, is waiting too. The kind without snoring roommates or cold drafts or the anxiety of tomorrow's hunt. So let yourself drift now. Let the medieval hunting lodge become just a story you visited, not a place you have to stay. The nobles can handle their own hunts without you. The dogs will chase deer whether you're there or not. And you can simply rest. Breathe slowly. Feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort, into safety, into the gentle darkness that asks nothing of you. No tests, no performances, no social hierarchies to navigate. Just peace, just rest, just the soft, forgiving present where you belong. The medieval world was real once, full of people living their complicated lives. But tonight, it's just a dream fading at the edges. And you, weary traveler through time, can finally sleep. Sweet dreams.